She thought she knew her marriage.
Carry me up.
The ocean struck the glass walls of the Malibu mansion in steady waves. Alana Brooks stood outside the master bedroom, her hand resting on the chrome handle. She had returned early from Los Angeles without calling ahead. The house was quiet, too quiet. The door was slightly open. White linen came into view first. The bed, disturbed. She pushed the door wider. Mikhail Soranov stood inches away from Camille. Before we continue, tell us where you're watching from and the time there. Her sister's bare shoulders faced him. His hand hovered at her waist. Not accidental, not distant. Close enough to feel breath. They did not see Alana at first. Camille's fingers pressed lightly against his chest. His collar was undone. The balcony doors were open, and ocean air lifted the sheer curtains behind them. The waves crashed again, then they turned. Camille's eyes widened. Mikhail's expression hardened into calculation. Alana did not scream. She did not drop her purse. She stepped inside. Her bare feet met the cold marble floor. The mirrored closet doors reflected all three of them in a single frame. Wife, husband, sister. The sheets behind them were twisted. Silence stretched. Shock moved through her body, but her face remained composed. Her breathing steady, her posture straight. Mikhail began, "Alana." She lifted one hand to stop him. Her gaze shifted to Camille. No words, no shaking, just clarity forming. The ocean struck the glass again. Everything that had felt uncertain for months aligned in one image. Alana inhaled once. Then she spoke softly. "Carry on." She turned and walked out, closing the door behind her. The latch clicked. Silence filled the hallway. The hallway felt longer than usual. Alana walked barefoot across polished marble, each step steady, measured. The ocean continued its rhythm against the glass walls, as if nothing inside the mansion had shifted. But everything had. Humiliation arrived quietly. Not loud, not chaotic. It settled beneath her skin like heat. Her own sister. In her home. In her bed. She stopped midway down the corridor, where a full-length mirror hung between abstract paintings Mikhail had purchased during an art fair in San Francisco. The woman staring back at her looked composed, controlled, untouched. Only her eyes had changed. She studied her reflection carefully. Shoulders straight, chin lifted, no tears. She pressed her lips together once, not to suppress emotion but to contain it. Emotion would not lead tonight. From behind the closed bedroom door, she heard nothing. No scrambling, no raised voices, no footsteps rushing after her. That silence confirmed more than any confession. If this had been a mistake, someone would have followed. She resumed walking. The staircase curved toward the main living area, glass panels revealing the dark Pacific beyond. The house felt exposed, transparent, like every secret could be seen through its walls. She reached the kitchen island and placed her purse down gently. Her fingers lingered on the cool marble surface. Images replayed in precise detail. The undone collar, Camille's hand, the space between their bodies. Her stomach tightened briefly, but she forced her breathing to remain even. This was not a moment for collapse. It was a moment for assessment. Pain tried to rise. She pressed it back. Upstairs, the bedroom door remained closed. Alana lifted her head slightly. The humiliation sharpened, and beneath it, something else began forming. Not rage, calculation. Alana moved toward the glass wall overlooking the ocean. The Pacific stretched into darkness, waves striking the rocks below with force. The sound filled the mansion, steady and relentless. She welcomed it. The rhythm gave her something solid to focus on. Inside her chest, shock began to harden. It no longer felt like disbelief. It felt like confirmation. For months, small details had felt off. Late meetings in San Francisco that ran too long. Messages answered in another room. Camille laughing too freely at dinner, leaning too comfortably across the kitchen island. She had dismissed each one. Trust had trained her to. Now every memory rearranged itself into a clean pattern. Her shoulders stiffened. The humiliation deepened, but she refused to let it bend her posture. She would not let them see her break. Not tonight. Not ever. She glanced toward the staircase. Still no movement. Still no footsteps. That told her everything. If there had been panic, someone would have rushed down with apologies. Instead, they remained upstairs, contained, waiting for her reaction. She would not give them one. Her emotional shutdown was not dramatic. It was quiet, controlled, deliberate. She reached for her phone, not to call anyone, but to check the time. 9:42 p.m. Ordinary. The world outside continued without interruption. Her marriage, however, had just shifted into something else entirely. The ocean crashed harder against the glass, mist clinging to the exterior panels. Alana placed her palm against the cool surface. Cold clarity settled in fully now. This was no accident. This was a choice. And she would answer it with one of her own. The mansion felt different now, not unfamiliar. Revealed. Alana walked back toward the base of the staircase, her movements unhurried. Each step echoed softly against marble and glass. The architecture Mikhail loved for its transparency now felt ironic. Walls of glass, open spaces, nothing hidden, except the truth. She rested her hand on the railing but did not climb. Instead, she listened. Upstairs remained silent. No argument. No explanation forming. No footsteps descending in urgency. That silence stripped away the final layer of denial. This was not confusion. It was intention. Her jaw tightened slightly. Not in anger, but in acceptance. Cold clarity replaced the last trace of shock. She began reviewing her marriage the way she once reviewed contracts for her own consulting clients. What had changed? When it changed? Who benefited? Mikhail's sudden interest in Camille's career plans. Private conversations on the balcony. The Napa trip. He insisted Camille join because she needed inspiration. Pieces locked into place with clean precision. She straightened her posture. If they expected emotion, they would be disappointed. If they expected confrontation, they would be waiting a long time. Her humiliation transformed into awareness. Awareness into strategy. The ocean struck the glass again, mist sliding down the exterior panels in uneven lines. Alana lifted her chin. Upstairs, the bedroom door remained closed. They were still in that room, together. The thought no longer pierced. It sharpened. And sharpness was useful. She turned back toward the hallway. It was time to end the scene. Alana walked back down the hallway toward the master bedroom. Not rushed, not hesitant, composed. The ocean continued striking the glass walls, steady and unbothered. The sound followed her like a pulse. She reached the door and paused for half a second. Not to prepare, to confirm. Her hand turned the handle. The room looked almost unchanged. White linen still disturbed. Balcony curtains still shifting with the sea air. Mikhail stood near the edge of the bed now. Camille had stepped farther back, arms folded loosely across herself. Distance created too late. Both of them watched her carefully, waiting. For tears. For rage. For collapse. Alana stepped inside once more. Her gaze moved from Camille to Mikhail with controlled precision. No trembling. No raised voice. The mirrored closet doors reflected the three of them again. The image felt final now. She let the silence stretch just long enough for discomfort to grow. Then she spoke. Carry on. Soft. Even. Final. Camille's breath caught. Mikhail's expression tightened, as if the reaction he had prepared for had been denied. Alana turned without looking back. She walked out of the room and closed the door gently. The latch clicked. The sound felt decisive. Downstairs, the ocean kept moving. The mansion remained standing. California remained calm. But something fundamental had shifted. She would not fight tonight. She would not beg. She would remember. And she would choose her response carefully. Now I want to ask you something. If you were in her position, would you confront them at that moment? Or would you walk away and plan your next move in silence? Tell me in the comments. 3 years earlier, the ballroom in San Francisco shimmered under gold stage lighting. Crystal chandeliers reflected against polished floors, while camera flashes sparked across the room. Mikhail Soronov stood beneath the spotlight, accepting an award for fastest-growing tech infrastructure company in California. His accent carried confidence as he thanked investors, board members, and partners. Then he reached for Alana's hand. None of this works without her, he said. Applause filled the hall. Alana rose gracefully from her seat. Black silk gown, diamond studs, composed smile. She joined him on stage as cameras captured the image everyone loved, the Russian tech billionaire and his poised wife. Beauty and power aligned. They looked effortless together. After the ceremony, guests approached in waves. You two are unstoppable. California's new power couple. Relationship goals. Alana thanked them politely. She knew how to hold eye contact, how to angle her body for photographs, how to speak with warmth without revealing anything personal. Later that night, they stepped onto the balcony overlooking the city skyline. The bay lights glowed behind them. Mikhail wrapped an arm around her waist. "You handled that well," he said. Handled, not celebrated, not appreciated. Handled. She brushed the comment aside. Success required discipline. She understood his language. Efficiency over emotion. Below them, black cars waited to escort them to the airport. Their private jet would take them to Napa for the weekend. As cameras continued to capture them inside the ballroom, the image broadcast across social media. Perfect smiles. Perfect marriage. Perfect empire. From the outside, nothing was missing. The private jet descended into Napa just after midnight. From the cabin window, vineyard lights stretched across the dark hills like quiet constellations. Mikhail reviewed financial projections on his tablet while Alana watched the landing strip approach. "The board wants expansion before fourth quarter," he said without looking up. She nodded. "Will that affect the Seattle acquisition?" "It won't if they listen." He closed the tablet and finally turned toward her. "Tomorrow we'll tour the estate. Investors love lifestyle alignment." Lifestyle alignment. Alana smiled faintly. She understood her role. Presence, poise, stability. The jet touched down smoothly. By morning they were photographed walking through rows of grapevines, sunglasses, coordinated neutrals, sunlight catching in her hair. A lifestyle magazine later labeled the spread California's most strategic marriage. At lunch with investors, Mikhail led the conversation with precision. Data, growth, market share. Alana contributed when asked, offering insight into branding and philanthropic positioning. They moved as a unit. Flawless. Yet during a pause in conversation, when a vineyard manager asked about their anniversary plans, Mikhail answered before she could. "We don't focus on dates. We focus on progress." Laughter circled the table. Alana smiled again. She told herself he meant nothing by it. That night, back at the estate house, she stood alone on the balcony, overlooking the vines. Mikhail remained inside on a call with Moscow investors. The wind carried the scent of soil and oak barrels. They had everything. Access, influence, wealth. Yet she felt a subtle distance growing between them. Not dramatic, not loud, just present. Back in Malibu, their calendar rarely had empty space. Product launches in Silicon Valley, charity galas in Los Angeles, panels in San Diego. Every week came with another event, another polished appearance. Their Instagram page grew rapidly. Photos of yacht dinners, vineyard tastings, charity fundraisers, captions about gratitude and growth. Comments flooded in. Power couple, marriage done right. Goals. Alana responded to a few with warmth. She understood branding. Public perception required maintenance. At home, though, conversations shortened. Mikhail began taking calls in his office with the door closed. At dinner, he often scrolled through market updates between bites. When she suggested a weekend off the grid, he said, "After the next funding round," there was always another round. One evening, she waited at the dining table while the food cooled. He entered 20 minutes late, tie loosened. "Board crisis," he said simply. She asked no further questions. During meals, silence began stretching longer than before. Not hostile, just functional. They discussed logistics, travel plans, investment portfolios. They stopped discussing feelings. On the surface, nothing appeared broken. They still attended events together, still shared a bed, still smiled for the cameras. But in the quiet spaces, something subtle shifted. Alana noticed he no longer reached for her hand absent-mindedly. He no longer asked about her consulting projects unless they intersected with his. She told herself ambition required sacrifice. She told herself this phase would pass. But small absences accumulate, and she began to feel less like a partner, more like a fixture. Camille arrived that summer, fresh from a short-lived startup in Oakland, frustrated and financially strained. She called Alana one evening asking if she could stay just for a few weeks. Rent had increased. Investors had pulled out. She needed space to regroup. Alana did not hesitate. Family first. Mikhail agreed with a brief nod. Temporary, he said. The house is large enough. At first, Camille kept to herself. She spent mornings job hunting on the terrace and evenings joining them for dinner. She was lively, observant, quick to laugh. Guests found her charming. During a backyard gathering in Malibu, Alana watched Camille tell a story near the pool. Mikhail listened closely, asking questions about her app concept, offering suggestions. He sees potential in her, a guest whispered to Alana. It's generous. Alana smiled. Later that night, as staff cleared glasses, she noticed Camille lingering in Mikhail's office doorway while he explained market positioning. The conversation extended longer than necessary. Nothing inappropriate, nothing overt. Still, something shifted in the air. On another evening, Camille borrowed one of Alana's dresses for a launch party in San Francisco. She stood before the mirror, adjusting the fabric. You always look effortless, Camille said. I'm still figuring it out. Mikhail glanced up from his phone. Confidence is practice, he replied. His tone was measured, encouraging. Alana brushed aside the faint discomfort rising in her chest. Sisters share space. Families support each other. She trusted them both. That trust felt natural then. Unquestioned. The first sign arrived quietly. One afternoon in Malibu, Alana sat beside the infinity pool, reviewing proposals for a nonprofit partnership. Her phone rested face down on the table. The ocean moved beyond the glass railing, steady and bright. Across the patio, Camille laughed at something Mikhail said. He had offered to review her updated pitch deck. They leaned over her laptop together, shoulders nearly touching. Alana glanced up briefly. The image looked harmless, supportive. She returned to her work. Her phone vibrated. She flipped it over, absent-mindedly. A notification preview appeared across the screen. Mikhail's name. A message. She assumed it was for her. But the contact line beneath it read, Camille. The preview was brief, incomplete. Don't mention this yet. Before she could process it, the notification disappeared. Camille's phone buzzed seconds later across the patio table. Camille's eyes dropped quickly. She typed a response with surprising speed. Alana watched for a moment. Then she told herself it was business. Strategy discussions. Perhaps about Camille's funding issues. She did not ask. She did not open Mikhail's messages later that night. She chose trust. Weeks passed. The moment faded. Until now, standing 3 years later in a silent Malibu hallway outside a closed bedroom door, that notification resurfaced in her memory with sharp clarity. Don't mention this yet. She finally understood what it might have meant, and how long silence had existed before she ever noticed it. Camille arrived in Malibu with 2 suitcases and a strained smile. The summer heat pressed against the driveway as her rideshare pulled away from the gate. The mansion stood tall behind her, all glass and pale stone, overlooking the Pacific. I hate asking, she said, as Alana hugged her. Oakland drained me. Investors pulled out. Rent went up. I needed space. You don't have to explain, Alana replied. This is your home too. Inside, the air felt cool and controlled. Staff carried Camille's luggage upstairs to the guest wing. Mikhail emerged from his office, phone in hand. Camille, he said, offering a polite embrace. We'll get you back on track. His tone was confident, assured. He thrived in problem-solving. At dinner that night, Camille explained her failed app launch. Funding delays, burn rate miscalculations, partnerships that collapsed without warning. I trusted the wrong people, she admitted. Mikhail listened closely, asking detailed questions about projections and user growth. You underestimated distribution, he said. Concept wasn't the issue. Camille leaned forward. You think it still has potential? It depends on execution. Alana watched them from across the kitchen island. Wine glasses reflected the pendant lights above. The conversation remained professional, constructive. She felt relieved. This arrangement would be temporary. A few weeks of support, a reset, family helping family. After dinner, Camille offered to clear plates. "You've done enough," Alana told her. Camille smiled gratefully. "I won't forget this." Gratitude filled her voice. Sincerely. That night, as Alana prepared for bed, she told herself the disruption was minor. A short adjustment. The mansion was large enough, and trust felt easy then. The first weeks passed smoothly. Camille woke early, setting up her laptop at the kitchen island while morning light spilled through the glass walls. She attended virtual meetings, revised pitch decks, and practiced investor calls out loud. Alana admired her determination. "You sound stronger already," she said one morning, pouring coffee. "I have to be," Camille replied. "Failure isn't permanent." Mikhail began offering structured advice in the evenings. He would lean against the counter, reviewing her numbers while she explained market adjustments. "You need sharper positioning," he told her one night. "Don't present as hopeful, present as inevitable." Camille laughed. "That's how you built yours. That's how you build anything." Their conversations grew longer, harmless, focused. At least that's how it appeared. One afternoon by the pool, Camille joined Mikhail while Alana finished a call inside. The sunset painted the water in warm tones. "You think I'm capable of this?" Camille asked him quietly. Mikhail adjusted his sunglasses. "Capability isn't your problem. Confidence is." When Alana stepped outside, she caught the end of the exchange. Camille's posture seemed more relaxed around him now, less like a guest, more like someone settling in. At dinner later, Camille refilled Mikhail's wine without being asked. Small gesture, easy to overlook. Alana noticed, but dismissed it. Gratitude sometimes shows itself through service, and Camille remained grateful. For now, gratitude slowly shifted into comfort. Comfort shifted into presence. Camille began spending more time in shared spaces. She moved her laptop from the guest wing to the main living area. Her notebooks spread across the kitchen island. Her voice carried easily through the open floor plan. "I think better around energy," she said when Alana suggested the office upstairs. Energy. Mikhail seemed to agree. He started asking about her progress without prompting. "How's user acquisition? Did you revise the cost model?" One evening, Alana returned from a consulting meeting in Los Angeles to find them seated close together on the sectional sofa, reviewing slides projected onto the wall screen. Camille leaned in to point at a graph. Mikhail's arm rested along the back of the couch behind her. Not touching. Close. They looked up when Alana entered. "Just strategy," Camille said quickly, smiling. Alana nodded. "Of course." At dinner that night, Camille spoke confidently about expansion plans. "I think I can relaunch in 3 months," she said. Mikhail watched her with focused attention. "You're learning fast." The compliment lingered in the air. Alana noticed how Camille's expression brightened under it. A subtle glow. Later, while clearing plates, Camille said lightly, "I never realized how intense Mikhail is about excellence. It's inspiring." Alana smiled. "He expects discipline," she replied. But she registered something else. Camille no longer sounded like someone rebuilding. She sounded like someone aligning. Still, nothing crossed a line. Nothing obvious. Only proximity. Growing. By the second month, Camille no longer felt like a temporary guest. Her clothes occupied more closet space. Her skincare products lined the bathroom counter in the guest wing. Staff began asking her preferences at breakfast. She moved through the mansion with familiarity. One evening, Alana hosted a small dinner for a venture capital couple visiting from Palo Alto. The table was set beneath soft pendant lighting, the ocean visible beyond the glass. Camille appeared wearing one of Alana's silk dresses. "You don't mind, right?" she asked, smoothing the fabric. "It looks good on you," Alana replied. During dinner, conversation flowed easily. Investments, market expansion, philanthropy. Camille contributed often, finishing Mikhail's thoughts before he did. "And we're considering a West Coast accelerator model," she said, glancing at him. Mikhail nodded. "That's correct." Their rhythm felt seamless. Alana noticed how frequently Camille turned toward him for validation after speaking, and how quickly he gave it. Later, at the kitchen island, wine glasses half full. Camille laughed at something Mikhail whispered. The laugh was softer than usual. Personal. Alana stood across from them, observing without comment. No rules had been broken, no boundaries declared, yet subtle shifts were visible. Camille began dressing with more intention at home. Light makeup in the afternoons. Hair styled even when no guests were expected. When Alana suggested a co-working space in Santa Monica to help Camille expand her network, Camille declined. "I'm learning more here," she said. And she meant it. The shift became visible at dinner. It was a quiet Tuesday evening in Malibu. No guests, no cameras, just the three of them seated at the long dining table overlooking the Pacific. Candles flickered between plates. The ocean moved in the background, dark and steady. Conversation stayed light at first. Camille spoke about a potential investor call scheduled for the following week. Mikhail asked precise questions about her revised numbers. "You tightened the margins," he noted. "I listened," she replied. Alana observed the exchange while cutting into her food. Their dialogue flowed easily now. Familiar. Practiced. At one point, Camille reached across the table to pass him the salt. Their fingers brushed briefly. Too brief to address. Long enough to register. Mikhail did not pull away immediately. Instead, he held her gaze for a second longer than necessary. Camille's smile softened. Something unspoken lingered there. Alana continued eating. She told herself she was reading too much into it. Proximity creates comfort. Comfort creates ease. Yet, as the conversation continued, Camille's attention remained fixed on Mikhail. Not on the food, not on the ocean, on him. When he spoke, she watched him closely. When he paused, she waited. When he laughed, she mirrored it. It was subtle, quiet, but unmistakable. Alana did not see it clearly yet. The audience would. Camille was no longer looking at Mikhail like a mentor. She was watching him like a possibility. Silicon Valley ran on velocity. 3 years earlier, Mikhail Sorenov's headquarters stood in the center of it all. A glass structure in San Jose, reflecting sky and steel, designed to signal transparency and dominance at once. Inside the top-floor boardroom, screens displayed live market data. Stock ticker lines moved in constant motion across the lower panels. Numbers rising, numbers falling. Mikhail stood at the head of the table, jacket removed, sleeves folded with precision. His voice carried across the room with controlled intensity. "We expand now," he said. "Not next quarter, now." Board members exchanged cautious glances. "The infrastructure risk," one began, "is manageable," Mikhail interrupted. "Risk without movement is decline." Silence followed. Then slow nods. Alana observed from the far end of the table. She had attended countless meetings like this, not as a decision-maker, but as presence. Stability. Public alignment. When the vote passed, Mikhail allowed himself a restrained smile. Outside the glass wall, helicopters crossed the bay skyline. Movement everywhere. After the meeting, executives approached Alana. "You balance him," one said quietly. "He's sharp. You soften the edge." She smiled politely. Softening was not the word she would have chosen. In the elevator down, Mikhail reviewed messages on his phone. "Dinner with the investors tonight," he said. "Wear something understated." Understated. She nodded. He led an empire built on control, acceleration, dominance. And increasingly, that structure extended beyond the boardroom. Expansion moved quickly. Within months, Ardent Grid Systems secured contracts across Northern California. Data centers rose outside Sacramento. Partnerships formed in Palo Alto. Industry publications began calling Mikhail the architect of scalable dominance. He embraced the language. At a press event in San Francisco, he stood before a wall-sized digital map showing network expansion across the West Coast. "Control infrastructure," he said into the microphone, "and you control the future." Applause followed. Alana stood beside him in a tailored cream suit, poised, composed, camera-ready. She shook hands, thanked journalists, and spoke about community investments in education and workforce development. Her role was clear. She humanized the empire. Later that evening, aboard a helicopter crossing the bay, Mikhail reviewed acquisition targets on his tablet. "Seattle next," he said. "Then Austin." She studied the city lights below. "And after that?" she asked. "There is no after. Only next." He spoke without looking up. Back at their San Jose penthouse, staff had arranged dinner for visiting investors. Conversation revolved around growth metrics and market capture. When one guest asked how they managed work-life balance, Mikhail responded easily. "Discipline," he said. "Emotion complicates efficiency." The comment passed without reaction from the table. Alana held her expression steady. The empire expanded through precision and control, and slowly those principles shaped their marriage too. Control became a language Mikhail spoke fluently. It showed in how meetings were structured, in how staff moved around him, in how silence followed his final word in any room. At headquarters in San Jose, executives adjusted their tone when he entered. Assistants aligned schedules with near-military precision. Deadlines were not flexible. At home, the structure was quieter, but similar. "Thursday is the foundation dinner," he reminded Alana one morning while scanning emails. "Press will attend. Keep remarks brief." She had prepared a speech about long-term community impact. 2 minutes, he added. "No more." She folded the paper neatly. "Of course." At events, she stood slightly behind him when cameras flashed. When journalists asked about company strategy, he answered. When they asked about philanthropy or culture, he nodded toward her. She was introduced often as his grounding force. The stabilizer, one magazine wrote. The word followed her. Stable, predictable, reliable. During a board retreat in Palo Alto, she suggested expanding mentorship programs for young Black founders. "It's not core infrastructure," Mikhail replied evenly. "Focus matters." Her idea did not reach the agenda. She smiled in public. Supported in interviews. Smooth conversations during tense negotiations. The empire thrived. Stock tickers climbed steadily across screens in the boardroom. And within that success, a quiet imbalance grew. He led. She aligned. By year 2 of expansion, the company's valuation doubled. Financial news channels displayed Mikhail's face beside rising graphs. Analysts described him as disciplined, strategic, and unemotional. He accepted the descriptions without correction. At a leadership summit in San Francisco, he delivered a keynote about long-term dominance in infrastructure. The auditorium remained silent as he spoke about leverage, scalability, and precision. "Emotion clouds execution," he said to a crowd of founders. "Structure creates freedom." Applause followed. Alana listened from the front row. She understood his philosophy. It had built their wealth. It had earned them respect across California's tech circles. But she also recognized how that same philosophy had entered their private life. Schedules replaced spontaneity. Efficiency replaced conversation. Decisions were optimized, not discussed. One evening, while reviewing travel plans for Napa, she suggested postponing a networking weekend. "We haven't had time alone," she said carefully. He looked up from his laptop. "This is important for the expansion round." "And us?" He paused briefly. "We're stable," he replied. "There's no urgency." Stable. The word lingered longer than intended. Later that night, she stood on the balcony of their San Jose penthouse, watching helicopters move across the bay. Inside, he remained on a late call with European partners. The empire demanded constant attention, and she had become part of its presentation. Polished, supportive, predictable. The board retreat in Palo Alto ended later than expected. Most executives had already left the glass conference room overlooking the bay. Stock performance charts still glowed across the wall screens. Assistants gathered folders quietly near the exit. Alana remained seated at the far end of the table, organizing her notes. She had planned to leave with Mikhail, but a final call delayed him. She stepped into the hallway to take a brief call from a nonprofit partner. When she returned, she heard his voice from inside the partially closed boardroom door. He was speaking to 2 senior investors. "She's consistent," Mikhail said calmly. "Stable, predictable. That's important at this level." A soft laugh followed from one of the men. "You mean she doesn't complicate things?" "Exactly," he replied. "No volatility, no surprises." The words landed with clinical precision. Alana did not move. Through the narrow opening in the door, she could see him standing at the head of the table, relaxed, confident, in control. The investors nodded approvingly. She fits the image, one added. Yes, Mikhail agreed. She understands her role. The conversation shifted back to acquisition timelines. Alana stepped back quietly before anyone noticed her presence. The hallway felt colder than before. She walked toward the elevator, posture unchanged. Stable, predictable, no volatility. Inside the descending glass elevator, the bay skyline stretched before her. For the first time, she wondered whether her steadiness had been mistaken for absence, and whether someone else in her home had noticed that imbalance long before she did. The mansion was silent again. Post-discovery, present tense. Alana sat alone in the guest bedroom at the far end of the hallway, the only room she had entered after closing the master suite door behind her. She did not cry in front of them. She did not allow that. But here, in the dim quiet, grief arrived. Not loud, not dramatic. It settled heavily in her chest, pressing against her ribs with steady weight. She sat on the edge of the bed, hands folded loosely in her lap, replaying the image with painful clarity. Camille's hand against his chest, Mikhail leaning in. Her husband, her sister, the betrayal felt layered. Marriage, family, trust. She inhaled slowly, then exhaled through her nose, controlling the rhythm of her breath the way she had learned to during high-stakes negotiations. Emotion demanded reaction, but reaction would hand them power. She refused. Tears gathered, but did not fall. She blinked them back with discipline. This grief would remain private. No witnesses, no audience. The Pacific wind pressed faintly against the glass in the distance. The rest of the house remained still. No footsteps approached her door. No apologies formed. That absence confirmed something else. They were not chasing her. They were waiting. Waiting to measure damage. Waiting to see if she would fracture. She rose from the bed slowly and crossed to the window. Outside, the coastline stretched into darkness, moonlight skimming across the water. Pain still pulsed beneath her calm exterior. But beneath the pain, something steadier formed. Observation. Alana did not return to the master bedroom that night. Instead, she changed into a silk robe and sat at the small writing desk in the guest room. The house lights were dimmed. Only the faint glow from the coastline filtered through the glass. Grief had done its work. Now her mind sharpened. She replayed the last 6 months with deliberate focus. Mikhail's unexplained late returns from San Jose. Camille's increasing confidence at home. The private conversations on the terrace. The message notification she once ignored. Patterns replaced emotion. She reached for her phone. No new messages from Mikhail. No attempt to explain. That silence itself was information. If he had believed she might leave immediately, he would have come to her. He would have tried to contain the situation. He had not. That meant he assumed control still belonged to him. She allowed that assumption to remain intact. For now, Alana opened her calendar app and scrolled back through shared commitments. Trips to Napa, late board dinners, evenings when Camille had insisted on staying home instead of joining her. Each date aligned differently under new light. She leaned back in the chair, closing her eyes briefly. Pain still lived inside her, but it no longer directed her thoughts. Strategy did. If she reacted tonight, she would become predictable. If she waited, she would learn. And information was leverage. The ocean struck the cliffs below, steady and relentless. Alana picked up her laptop from the desk drawer. Observation required access. The laptop screen lit the dark room in a pale blue glow. Alana sat upright in the desk chair.
It was structure. Money leaves patterns, and patterns never lie.
Screen lit the dark room in a pale blue glow. Alana sat upright in the desk chair, posture straight, fingers steady over the keyboard. The rest of the mansion remained silent. No movement from the hallway, no knock at her door. She logged into their shared household management account first. Routine expenses appeared. Staff payroll, property maintenance, travel bookings. Everything looked clean. She moved next to the joint investment dashboard. The interface required dual authentication. She entered her credentials without hesitation. A code flashed to her phone. She entered it. Access granted. Numbers filled the screen. Asset allocations, equity positions, liquidity pools. Her breathing remained even. She was not searching blindly. She filtered by transfers over the last 6 months. Most transactions aligned with expansion projects, venture capital commitments, infrastructure upgrades. Then she noticed something smaller. Recurring transfers labeled as consulting fees. Not through the company. Through a private holding account she and Mikhail shared for discretionary investments. The recipient name was abbreviated. CB Advisory. Her pulse tightened once. Camille Brooks. The amounts were not large enough to alarm an auditor. Large enough to matter. Monthly. Consistent. She clicked deeper. The payment descriptions were vague. Strategic development. Innovation analysis. She knew Camille had not secured formal consulting contracts. Alana leaned back slowly. Grief returned for a brief second. Then discipline pressed it down. This was no longer suspicion. This was evidence forming. And evidence required patience. Alana did not confront the discovery. She enlarged the transaction history and exported the data quietly to a private folder on her laptop. Dates, amounts, frequency. Each entry aligned with evenings she now remembered clearly. The Napa trip, where Camille insisted on staying behind at the estate house while she toured vineyards with investors. The San Francisco gala, where Mikhail had claimed a late strategy session. The Tuesday dinners that ran long upstairs in his office. The transfers matched the timeline. She opened a secondary browser window and searched corporate registry filings in California. CB Advisory was registered as a single-member consulting entity, filed 3 months after Camille moved into the mansion. The listed address was not Oakland. It was a post office box in Palo Alto. Alana felt the shift again. Pain converting into calculation. She closed the browser and stared at the Pacific through the glass. Waves rolled in steady succession, striking the rocks without hesitation. Inside, she felt the opposite. Measured restraint. She could walk upstairs now. Present the evidence. Demand explanation. Instead, she reached for her phone and turned it face down on the desk. Confrontation would give them time to prepare responses. Silence would give her time to prepare structure. She reopened the account page and scanned older entries. 2 months prior, a larger transfer appeared, labeled simply as capital allocation. The amount exceeded Camille's previous monthly fees, substantially. Alana's jaw tightened. This was no minor assistance. This was integration. Alana clicked into the larger transfer. The screen loaded slowly. $480,000. Capital allocation. Origin. Their shared discretionary holding account. Destination, CB Advisory. Her breathing did not change, but something inside her settled with final certainty. This was not mentorship. This was funding. She opened the transaction details. Authorization required dual approval. The digital signature displayed Mikhail's credentials. The second approval line showed her own. Timestamped during a period she remembered clearly. She had been in Los Angeles, speaking at a non-profit event. She had approved multiple routine transfers from her phone that afternoon, without examining each line item. She trusted the structure. He had hidden it inside normal activity. Alana leaned back slowly in the chair. The laptop glow reflected in her eyes. Outside, the Pacific coastline stretched dark and endless. The betrayal was no longer emotional alone. It was financial, strategic, deliberate. She scrolled further. 3 additional transfers followed in smaller increments, spaced weeks apart. Each aligned with evenings Camille and Mikhail had spent reviewing business strategy. The pattern was undeniable. Alana closed the laptop halfway but did not shut it fully. The house remained silent upstairs. They believed tonight was about proximity. They had no idea it was also about proof. She reopened the screen and downloaded full statements for the last 12 months. If they were building something together, she would understand its structure before they realized she was watching. The sky over Malibu shifted from black to deep gray. Alana had not slept. The laptop remained open on the desk, financial statements downloaded and organized into folders. The evidence sat quietly on the screen, waiting for action. Her phone buzzed once on the nightstand. "Mikhail, can we talk?" The message appeared simple, controlled. She did not respond. Instead, she walked to the window and watched the Pacific roll forward in steady waves. The coastline looked unchanged. The mansion stood firm behind her. But her marriage had entered a decision point. Divorce was the cleanest option. Immediate. Final. She imagined walking into the master bedroom, placing the printed statements on the bed, and informing him that she was done. She imagined the headlines in California tech media, the speculation, the board instability. She also imagined Camille's face. Shocked. Cornered. Exposed. The image tempted her. But then another thought surfaced. If she filed now, he would move first. He controlled most of the corporate structure. He understood defensive positioning. He would protect assets swiftly. She would react to his response. That would place her behind. Alana rested her forehead briefly against the cool glass. Pain urged confrontation. Discipline urged patience. This choice would determine everything that followed. Alana left the guest room just before sunrise. The hallway felt colder than usual. She paused outside the master bedroom door but did not enter. Whatever conversation waited inside could wait longer. Instead, she walked downstairs and poured herself coffee. Her hands remained steady. Divorce would be justified. No one would question her decision if the truth surfaced. Betrayal combined with financial deception provided more than enough grounds. But immediate action would trigger immediate defense. Mikhail was trained to anticipate threats. His empire depended on it. If she confronted him now, he would mobilize lawyers before breakfast. Assets would shift. Narratives would form. Camille would retreat into victimhood. Alana sat at the kitchen island and opened her laptop again. She reviewed the corporate ownership breakdown of Ardent Grid Systems. Holding companies layered beneath holding companies. Complex, but not impenetrable. She had signed documents before without challenging structure. That would not happen again. She removed her wedding ring slowly and placed it on the marble surface in front of her. The weight felt different off her finger. Lighter. She studied it for several seconds. Then she picked it up and slid it back into place. Not forgiveness. Strategy. The marriage publicly would remain intact. For now, control over emotion required control over timing. She closed the laptop. Her choice was forming. By mid-morning, the house operated as if nothing had shifted. Staff moved quietly through the kitchen. Camille appeared from the guest wing dressed in linen and confidence. Mikhail entered moments later, composed, unreadable. "Alana," he said carefully, "about last night. We'll talk later," she replied evenly. Not cold, not warm, neutral. They exchanged a brief glance. He searched her face for volatility. He found none. Camille avoided direct eye contact and focused on her phone. Alana took her seat at the table and began reviewing emails as though this were any other Tuesday. Inside, the conflict sharpened. Part of her wanted immediate resolution, to cut clean, to refuse shared space for another hour. But another part recognized something crucial. This was not only about infidelity, it was about leverage, about power, about the quiet redistribution of assets without her awareness. She needed full visibility before making any irreversible move. When Mikhail left for a meeting in San Jose, she watched his car disappear beyond the gates. Camille retreated upstairs shortly after. The house returned to stillness. Alana reopened the financial files. Divorce would free her emotionally. Strategy would protect her structurally. She chose structure. Her jaw set with controlled determination. The long game required silence. By afternoon, the decision felt settled, not impulsive, deliberate. Alana scheduled a meeting in Los Angeles under the pretense of a non-profit strategy session. The calendar entry appeared harmless on the shared system. No flags, no suspicion. She drove down the Pacific Coast Highway alone. The ocean stretched beside her, steady and vast. The same water that framed her home now accompanied her towards something quieter and far more calculated. Pain still existed. It surfaced in flashes. Camille's face at dinner. Mikhail's voice in the boardroom describing her as stable, predictable. Each memory could have triggered a reaction. Instead, it reinforced her choice. At a red light overlooking Santa Monica, she pressed her fingers lightly against the steering wheel. If she dismantled him publicly now, he would survive. He would reposition. If she dismantled him structurally, he would feel it. She exited toward downtown Los Angeles as the skyline rose ahead. Glass towers reflected late afternoon sun. offices where power shifted without noise. Her phone buzzed once. Mikhail again. Dinner tonight? She responded with a simple reply. Yes. No accusation, no disruption. Silence protected her advantage. She parked in a private garage beneath a high-rise law firm, whose name did not appear in her shared contacts list. The elevator doors closed behind her. This was the moment she committed fully to patience. The law office overlooked downtown Los Angeles through floor-to-ceiling glass. Clean lines, neutral tones, discretion built into the architecture. Alana sat across from a senior partner whose reputation rested on quiet settlements and strategic separations involving high-net-worth executives. I need clarity, she said calmly, not reaction. The attorney listened without interruption as she outlined the financial transfers, the layered holding structures, the shared accounts. Do you want to file immediately? He asked. The question landed heavily. Immediate filing meant emotional release. It also meant exposure, board scrutiny, media speculation, asset defense. Alana folded her hands neatly on the conference table. No, she replied. The word felt decisive. I want documentation prepared. I want analysis of asset exposure. I want to understand every layer before he suspects movement. The attorney nodded. Then we move quietly. He slid a non-disclosure agreement across the table. She signed without hesitation, ink against paper. Commitment to the long game. When she stepped back into the elevator, her reflection in the mirrored walls looked different from the woman who had opened that bedroom door. Not wounded, focused. She returned to Malibu before sunset. At dinner, she maintained composure. Camille spoke about a new investor call. Mikhail discussed expansion in Austin. Neither detected the shift. Inside, the decision was complete. Silence would be her strategy. Let me ask you something. Is silence strength in betrayal? Or is it weakness disguised as control? Tell me what you think in the comments. The shift began quietly. No announcement, no confrontation, just paperwork. 2 days after meeting the Los Angeles attorney, Alana scheduled a review with her personal financial advisor, separate from the joint team she and Mikhail typically used. The meeting took place in a private office in Santa Monica overlooking the coast. No company branding, no shared access. I want a full inventory of my direct holdings, she said evenly. And I want liquidity repositioned where possible. Her advisor raised a brow but did not question her tone. Within hours, accounts that were solely in her name began moving. Dividends redirected. Minority shares consolidated. A trust fund originally structured jointly was quietly amended within legal boundaries. Nothing illegal. Nothing dramatic. Just awareness. Back in Malibu, she maintained routine. Morning coffee, calendar coordination, dinner conversations. Mikhail noticed something subtle. You've been busy, he remarked one evening, watching her close her laptop. Consulting, she replied smoothly. True. Just incomplete. At night, ocean wind moved through the balcony curtains while she reviewed spreadsheets alone. The glow from her screen reflected in the glass doors. For the first time in years, her financial picture stood separate from his empire. Independent, clear. The act did not erase betrayal, but it restored balance. Reclaiming identity required structure, and she was building it piece by piece. Napa returned to her thoughts. 2 years earlier, she had proposed investing in a boutique vineyard, focused on sustainable production and private label exports. The concept combined her interest in community partnerships with long-term equity growth. Mikhail had dismissed it quickly. Too small, he had said. It won't scale. She had let it go then. Now she revisited it. Alana drove north alone, leaving Malibu before sunrise. The hills of Napa rolled into view by late morning, green and steady beneath a wide California sky. The vineyard owner, Elena Vargas, greeted her at the entrance gate. The estate was modest compared to the properties she and Mikhail typically toured, but it held potential. They walked through rows of vines as workers prepared for harvest. Sunlight filtered through leaves, soil underfoot. No glass boardrooms, no stock tickers. Expansion requires capital, Elena explained. But we want to keep majority control local. Alana nodded. That matters. They toured the processing facility, reviewed distribution channels. discussed export contracts already forming in small quantities. This was not a tech empire. It was steady growth, intentional. Later, inside a small office overlooking the vines, Alana reviewed the preliminary agreement. Her investment would secure significant minority ownership, in her name alone. When she signed the letter of intent, her signature felt deliberate. A choice made without needing validation. For the first time in years, she invested in something he once dismissed. And she did not tell him. Back in Malibu, the shift became perceptible, not obvious, just present. Alana moved through the house with a new steadiness. She no longer waited for Mikhail to initiate conversation. She no longer volunteered updates about her schedule unless necessary. She created space, subtle, measured. One evening on the balcony, ocean wind lifting the curtains behind them, Mikhail studied her more closely than usual. "You've been distant," he said. "Busy," she replied calmly. "With what?" "Work." The answer gave him nothing. He leaned against the glass railing, watching her face for cracks. He was accustomed to reading people, board members, investors, competitors. He struggled now. At dinner, Camille discussed a potential partnership with a Bay Area accelerator. Mikhail asked questions. Alana listened without engaging. The absence of her usual input created imbalance. Later that night, he approached her in the hallway. "Is something wrong?" The question carried restrained concern. "No," she said evenly. "Everything is stable." The word held weight. He paused. The air between them shifted. For the first time, he sensed distance without understanding its source. Control felt slightly out of reach. Not lost, but less certain. The vineyard contract moved forward within weeks. Alana returned to Napa for a formal signing. This time, the meeting took place in a renovated tasting room, overlooking rows of vines ready for harvest. No press, no announcements, just signatures and sealed agreements. Elena placed the finalized documents on the wooden table between them. "With this capital, we scale distribution without losing identity," she said. "That's the point," Alana replied. She signed cleanly. Her name stood alone on the ownership line. Later, she walked the property by herself, heels in hand, soil cool beneath her feet. Workers moved in quiet coordination. The pace was steady, not frantic. She felt grounded, not as an extension of Mikhail's empire, but as an investor with her own direction. Back in Malibu that evening, ocean wind swept through the balcony curtains as she reviewed updated financial summaries on her laptop. The numbers were modest compared to ardent grid systems, but they were hers. Mikhail entered the room and paused when he saw the screen. "What's that?" he asked. "A diversification," she answered. He stepped closer, scanning the header briefly. "Napa?" "Yes." He studied her for a moment longer than usual. "You didn't mention it. You didn't ask." The exchange remained calm. But something shifted. He was no longer fully informed. The change did not explode. It was unsettling. Days passed with a new undercurrent in the house. Mikhail began asking more questions about her schedule. Not aggressively, curiously. "You're traveling again this week?" he asked one morning. "Yes," she replied, stirring her coffee. "Where?" "Northern California." "For the vineyard?" She met his gaze evenly. Among other things, the lack of detail irritated him. He masked it well. At headquarters in San Jose, he found himself distracted during a strategy session. An executive presented quarterly projections, but his mind drifted back to the brief exchange on the balcony. She had moved without his input, without his approval. That was new. That evening in Malibu, he stood at the glass wall overlooking the Pacific, while Alana worked at the dining table. "You've changed," he said quietly. "In what way?" "You don't check in the same way." She closed her laptop slowly. "I didn't realize I needed to." The ocean wind pressed against the glass behind him. He turned toward her fully now. There was no accusation in her tone, no anger, just distance. For a man who built an empire on control, distance felt unfamiliar, unmeasurable. He searched her expression for signs of volatility. He found composure, and that unsettled him more. He could respond to anger. He could counter confrontation, but he could not predict silence paired with independent movement. For the first time, He sensed something shifting beneath him. Not visible, not loud, but real. The Silicon Valley Global Infrastructure Summit filled the convention center in San Jose with executives, founders, and media crews. Stage lights washed the main hall in bright white beams. Screens displayed ardent grid systems across a rotating digital backdrop. Mikhail and Alana arrived together, coordinated, polished. Photographers called their names as they stepped onto the red carpet. "Over here, look this way." Mikhail placed a steady hand at the small of her back. The gesture looked intimate to cameras, familiar, controlled. Alana smiled with precision. Public unity, private detachment. Inside the auditorium, applause erupted as Mikhail took the stage for the keynote. He spoke about infrastructure dominance, expansion into Austin, global partnerships forming across Europe. His voice carried authority. The audience responded, clapping, nodding, recording. From the front row, Alana watched with steady composure. She knew his cadence, the calculated pauses, the emphasis on inevitability. When he finished, he extended a hand toward her again. "None of these functions without alignment," he said into the microphone. "My wife ensures that—" The spotlight shifted. She joined him on stage. Applause returned. She thanked the audience briefly, speaking about sustainable partnerships and long-term vision. Her tone remained warm, measured, no sign of fracture. To everyone watching, the marriage stood intact, strong, aligned. Only she knew the separation already forming beneath the surface. After the keynote, they moved to a private networking lounge reserved for top-tier investors. Glass walls overlooked the bay. Screens replayed highlights from the morning session. Champagne circulated on silver trays. Executives approached Mikhail first. "Dominant quarter," one said. "Expansion was bold," another added. Alana stood beside him, nodding at the right moments, offering brief commentary when discussions turned to corporate culture or community investment. They moved in practiced rhythm. Public unity. He leaned toward her occasionally, whispering small remarks for effect. "See? Strong turnout. You were excellent," she replied smoothly. The exchange looked natural. Private detachment. When a venture partner asked how they maintained stability at home despite rapid growth, Mikhail answered confidently. "Clarity," he said. "We don't allow distractions." Alana's smile did not shift. Distractions. She felt the word register. Later, during a panel discussion, she sat under the stage lights while industry leaders debated future infrastructure risks. Cameras caught her composed expression repeatedly. From the audience perspective, she appeared grounded, present, engaged. Inside, she measured every interaction carefully. He assumed loyalty remained fixed. He assumed she still operated within his framework. The applause that followed each session only reinforced his confidence. He did not realize she had already stepped outside the structure. By late afternoon, the conference shifted into breakout sessions. Mikhail joined a closed-door strategy roundtable with international partners. Alana remained in the main hall for a moderated discussion on corporate responsibility. Stage lights warmed her face as she took her seat beside two nonprofit leaders and a venture capitalist. "Trust is currency," she said into the microphone when asked about leadership. "Without it, growth becomes fragile." The audience nodded. Applause followed. Her words carried layered meaning. From the stage, she could see Mikhail through the glass corridor outside the hall, moving between meetings with confident precision. He looked in control, certain. After her session ended, she stepped backstage and retrieved her phone. No messages from him. She opened her calendar instead. Scrolling, selecting, she requested a private board session for the following week under the formal category of governance review. Standard procedure. No alarm. The agenda line read simply, "Financial Transparency Update." She did not elaborate. The request circulated automatically to board members' assistants. Mikhail's calendar would reflect the meeting, not its purpose. She slipped the phone back into her clutch. When she returned to the main lobby, he approached her. "You handled that well," he said. She met his eyes evenly. "I always do." Her detachment had matured into certainty. He interpreted her composure as alignment. She interpreted his confidence as vulnerability. The final evening reception filled the rooftop terrace overlooking the bay. City lights shimmered below. Soft music carried through the air. Industry leaders clustered beneath string lights, glasses raised in celebration of quarterly success. Mikhail stood at the center of a conversation circle, confident, composed, admired. Alana remained beside him, poised as always. When a journalist asked if expansion into Texas would require structural shifts, he responded without hesitation. "We anticipate no disruption," he said. "Our foundation is secure." She felt the irony but did not show it. Applause followed a brief toast. Cameras captured them clinking glasses. Public unity, private detachment. As the evening thinned and guests began departing, Alana stepped aside to take a call. Instead, she opened her email. Board confirmations had begun arriving. Attendance, confirmed. She typed a short follow-up to the firm's legal liaison. Ensure full financial reports are prepared. No detail, no hint, just preparation. When she returned to Mikhail's side, he placed a hand lightly at her back. "You were quiet tonight," he observed. "Listening," she replied. He nodded, satisfied. He believed loyalty remained fixed. He did not realize a governance review was already scheduled, and he did not know what would be placed on that table. Before we move into the reveal chapter, make sure you're subscribed. The boardroom in San Jose felt colder than usual. Glass walls overlooked the bay. Screens displayed quarterly performance metrics in clean columns of green and white. Executives took their seats one by one, tablets open, expressions neutral. Mikhail entered last, confident, unaware. Alana sat midway down the long table, a slim leather folder resting before her. She wore navy, understated, composed. "Financial transparency review," Mikhail said smoothly as he took the head seat. "Routine governance update." He nodded toward the CFO. "Proceed." The CFO began presenting standard summaries. Revenue growth, infrastructure expansion, capital deployment. Alana waited. She watched Mikhail's posture. Relaxed shoulders, measured breathing, total control. When the presentation concluded, the room prepared to adjourn. "That won't be necessary," Alana said evenly. Silence followed. Mikhail turned toward her slowly. "Is there an additional item?" he asked. "Yes." She opened the leather folder and slid a printed report across the table toward the nearest board member. Then another, and another. Documents moved quietly across polished wood. The title page read, "Discretionary Holding Account Activity Review." The room stilled. Screens reflected in the glass walls. Outside, helicopters crossed the skyline without pause. Inside, attention shifted fully to her. Strategic dominance required timing, and her timing was exact. Pages turned. The sound was soft but sharp in the silence. One board member adjusted his glasses. Another leaned forward, scanning line items more closely. Recurring transfers, consulting fees, capital allocation, each highlighted, each dated, each tied to the discretionary holding account jointly managed by Mikhail and Alana. Mikhail's expression did not change immediately. "These are personal allocations," he said calmly. "Within legal bounds." Alana nodded once. "Correct, legal. But undisclosed in governance reports." The CFO shifted uncomfortably. "These weren't categorized as corporate expenditures," he said carefully. "They intersect with corporate advisory positioning," Alana replied. "The recipient entity shares strategic overlap with internal development planning." She did not mention Camille. Not yet. She kept the focus on process, transparency, structure. "This isn't about legality," she continued. "It's about disclosure consistency at the executive level." Mikhail's gaze locked onto hers. He understood now. She wasn't exposing an affair. She was exposing misalignment. The board members continued reviewing the packet. "Why was this not discussed?" one asked. Mikhail maintained composure. "It was minor." Alana's tone remained steady. "Nearly $500,000 is not minor in governance language." The room grew tighter. No raised voices, no emotional outbursts, just documentation, calm authority. For the first time since the meeting began, Mikhail shifted in his chair. The silence in the boardroom deepened. No one reached for water. No one checked their phone. All attention remained fixed on the printed pages. Mikhail leaned back slowly, fingers steepled beneath his chin. "These funds came from our discretionary account," he said evenly. "They were not corporate expenditures. That account," Alana replied, "is referenced in multiple strategic planning sessions where advisory positioning intersects with corporate growth." She turned a page deliberately. "This entity was registered 3 months after it began receiving capital." The room absorbed that. A senior board member spoke carefully. "Are you suggesting a conflict of interest?" "I'm suggesting incomplete disclosure," Alana answered. Her tone never sharpened, never rose. She did not mention Camille's name. She did not mention the bedroom. She did not mention betrayal. This was not about personal humiliation. It was about fiduciary responsibility. Mikhail's eyes narrowed slightly. "You've reviewed our private accounts thoroughly," he said. "Yes," she replied. The statement carried weight. He recognized it. He had underestimated her visibility. One executive cleared his throat. "We require full reporting on any advisory relationship tied to leadership," he said. "Even if funded privately." Mikhail nodded once, tight. "That can be arranged." His voice remained controlled. But the room had shifted. Authority no longer flowed in a single direction. Alana closed her folder gently. Her objective was not spectacle. It was a recalibration, and recalibration had begun. The meeting extended 40 minutes longer than planned. Additional documentation was requested, clarifications scheduled, independent review proposed. None of it is dramatic. All of it is significant. Mikhail remained outwardly composed, answering questions with measured precision. He did not deny the transfers. He framed them as strategic support for emerging advisory insight. But something had shifted. When the board chair concluded the session, his final remark was clear. "We expect full transparency moving forward, not suggestion, expectation." Chairs moved back from the table. Executives gathered the tablets quietly. Conversations remained subdued. Alana rose without haste. Documents were stacked neatly back into her folder. No eye contact between her and Mikhail until the room emptied. When the final assistant closed the door behind them, the boardroom felt larger, colder. He stood at the head of the table. She remained halfway down its length. "You could have spoken to me privately," he said, voice controlled. "I did," she replied calmly. "When I stayed silent." He studied her face carefully, the steady expression, the absence of visible anger. He was used to responding to confrontation. This was different. "You planned this," he said quietly. "Yes." No apology, no hesitation. His composure thinned. The boardroom door remained closed. San Jose's skyline reflected faintly against the glass walls. Helicopters moved in the distance, indifferent to what had just shifted inside. Mikhail stepped away from the head of the table. "For how long?" he asked quietly. Alana held his gaze. Her posture remained straight, her tone measured. "For how long have you been reviewing accounts, monitoring transfers?" He wasn't asking about governance anymore. He was asking about awareness. She walked slowly toward the center of the room, placing the leather folder down on the polished table between them. "You're careful," he continued. "You don't act without information." "That's true." His jaw tightened slightly. The silence stretched, heavy but controlled. He searched her expression for a crack, for anger, for hurt he could address or redirect. He found composure. "How long have you known?" he asked. The question carried more than financial implication. It carried the bedroom, the dinner table, the late nights. She met his eyes steadily. "Long enough." No accusation, no raised voice. Just certainty. The words settled into the space between them like a verdict. For the first time since she opened that bedroom door, the power dynamic tilted visibly. He understood then. This was not a reaction. This was strategy. And she had been ahead of him for weeks. The ocean was miles away, but the shift felt just as forceful. California family court did not resemble drama. No raised voices, no spectacle, just paperwork, quiet procedure, measured statements. Alana sat beside her attorney in a neutral-toned courtroom in Los Angeles. Morning light filtered through high windows. The atmosphere felt procedural, almost clinical. Across the aisle, Mikhail remained composed in a tailored suit. Camille was not present. The petition cited irreconcilable differences. The financial disclosures were thorough, prepared, documented. Weeks of quiet structuring had already shifted liquidity, clarified asset divisions, and protected independent holdings. There were no surprises left. The judge reviewed terms briefly. Asset division aligned with California law. Prenuptial clauses activated. Independent investments recognized. The vineyard in Napa stood fully in her name. Joint discretionary funds had already been frozen pending audit. Mikhail's legal team requested minimal adjustments. Her attorney declined them calmly. No emotional argument entered the room. No public scandal. The affair never appeared in filings. It did not need to. When proceedings concluded, the judge's tone remained even. Dissolution granted. That was all. Alana stood slowly. The marriage ended without spectacle, without collapse, without raised voices echoing in a courtroom. Outside, Los Angeles traffic moved steadily. The world did not pause. Freedom did not feel explosive. It felt clean. The Malibu mansion sold within 3 months, not in desperation, indecision. Alana chose not to keep the house that had framed both illusion and betrayal. The glass walls, once symbols of success, now felt unnecessary. She moved into a coastal property farther south, smaller, private, designed for quiet rather than display. The vineyard in Napa expanded steadily. Distribution contracts doubled within the first year. Local partnerships strengthened. The label carried her name discreetly on the investor registry. Ownership. Independent. Camille relocated to Palo Alto shortly after the board review. CB Advisory dissolved quietly once financial scrutiny intensified. Investors withdrew. Momentum faded. Without capital flow, her confidence
And power restored. Because revenge was never loud. It was structured.
Investors withdrew. Momentum faded. Without capital flow, her confidence thinned. Mikhail remained at Ardent Grid Systems, but his authority no longer operated unchecked. Governance oversight increased. Reporting requirements tightened. At a corporate event months later, he stood alone more often than before. Alana attended one final industry gathering. Poised, unattached. When acquaintances approached her with polite curiosity, she offered no details. Some transitions are necessary, she said simply. She did not expose. She did not retaliate publicly. Camille's absence spoke louder than accusation. Mikhail's tightened oversight spoke louder than scandal. Humiliation had reversed direction. Dignity remained intact. Power, once uneven, now rested entirely in her control. Months later, the Pacific looked different from her new balcony. Same ocean. Different view. Alana stood alone as evening light settled over the coastline. No glass mansion behind her. No shared calendar to maintain. No forced alignment. Freedom felt quiet. Earned. She often thought back to that night in Malibu. The open door. White linen disturbed. Camille's hand against Mikhail's chest. For a moment, she allowed herself to revisit it fully. If she had screamed, what would have changed? If she had thrown accusations into the room, what would have shifted? He would have defended. Camille would have denied. Emotion would have taken control. Instead, she had said 2 words. Carry on. At the time, they assumed indifference. They assumed shock. They assumed silence meant weakness. It did not. Silence gave her time. Time gave her information. Information gave her leverage. And leverage restored power. The memory no longer carried pain. It carried perspective. She turned from the balcony and walked inside. Her phone buzzed with a vineyard update. Distribution numbers rising steadily. Structured growth. Intentional expansion. Revenge had not been loud. It had been calculated. The story never reached headlines. No scandal trended across Silicon Valley feeds. No public statements accused anyone of betrayal. The world saw a controlled separation between 2 executives with different priorities. That was intentional. Alana never needed public sympathy. She needed restoration. On a final visit to Napa before harvest season, she walked the vineyard rows at sunset. Workers moved steadily between vines. The air carried the scent of soil and late summer heat. She paused near the highest point of the property and looked out over the valley. There was no rage left in her, no urgency, only clarity. She had not destroyed him. She had corrected the imbalance. She had not exposed her sister. She had allowed consequence to unfold naturally. When trust breaks, reaction is easy. Structure requires discipline. That night in Malibu, when she closed the bedroom door and said carry on, she chose patience over spectacle. That choice reshaped everything. Revenge was not loud. It was structured. And structure lasts longer than anger. Now I want to ask you something. If you were in her position, would you have chosen revenge or peace? Would you have confronted immediately or moved in silence? Tell me your answer in the comments. And if this story moved you, subscribe for the next chapter of power, loyalty, and consequence.